Yesterday, I published an article on Substack that talked about what I consider sort of the essential ABCs of doing a startup, but people don't read anymore, so I'm doing a video because I consider the topic important. The first thing is settling upon a rock solid set of values, which everybody sort of nods their head about, but they don't do that, and I'll tell you why in a second. Second thing is making sure that everybody's on the same plan, which also everybody nods their head at, but they don't do that either. And I'll tell you why, because the third thing is where they start, which is the acquisition of capital. And because they say, well, the biggest reason why companies fail is because they run out of capital. So they focus on raising money, but they haven't really established the why yet, and they haven't established the plan. And so they go through like a 6-month honeymoon phase, and then reality hits, and they start pointing fingers. And I've seen it happen over and over again. In fact, I've got my own company that's been going along for 7 years, and we went through our first existential crisis. It was look at this, by the way. This is in my neighborhood. This thing is completely filled with water when it floods, and it's pretty great, actually. The reason is we actually got off to a strong start. We had a customer that brought all that sort of good money, which people think is a good thing, but sometimes it's a pain. What happens is that the people that bring the money end up dominating your company. And what happened is that these guys said, well, now that we've established a marketplace, we're going to use it to sell cannabis. And we could have done it. I could have actually, it's a government's platform, so I could have, satisfied the criteria of regulatory compliance. Look at this guy who's like right here. You see him? I didn't even see him. He's sitting right there. We could have done it, but I said this isn't the business I want to be in. I don't want to deal with crypto, and I don't want to deal with cannabis. And I said no. So we fired him. That kicked off our first existential crisis, which was basically suddenly we didn't have capital, and we were dealing with a campaign of character assassination. And I realized that my CTO was operating under his own plan, which is pretty devastating. So I'll go back to the first three things, because the way we actually succeeded in navigating this is that my co-founder and I solidified on a set of rock solid values. And we would sort of reiterate these values every week when we went through our tasks. First thing was the values. Second thing was getting us on the same page, which is what I opened with. Values, which will basically stick with you over the long term. That is really what defines if you're going to make it or not. Second thing, let's get you on the same plan. That one is tricky. People say that they're operating within the same plan, but often they're still like working the plan from their last employer or the employer before. It's kind of like those people that date and date and date and date without ever addressing the fact that they're running away from, one heartbreak after another. What they do is they bring the baggage of their prior thing into the situation, which is kind of a bummer. So getting them to actually work the same plan is hard, actually. And that's how I came to realize that my CTO, he'd said that we were on the same page, but he was still operating under old assumptions, and it almost killed me. It almost destroyed the business. So we went through our first existential crisis because we solidified around a set of rock solid values, and we got everybody on the same page. And that's the only way you're going to acquire capital on your terms, okay? So the other thing I'll say about capital, because I think it's important. People think they understand, but I don't think they do. I met an investment banker in DC not long ago, and he said, Kent, I teach my kids that money is something you spend on yourself, and capital are resources that you use to bring about an outcome, usually on behalf of a community. And the subtlety there is that there's people who begin to think that they are the stewards of capital that they spend for themselves, and what they end up doing is misappropriating capital that's supposed to be stewarded by the organization. And what happens is you run into a situation where a person begins to tell themselves they're entitled to seize the show, to seize the plan on their terms, because they feel entitled to the capital. And they don't know that. They actually aren't honest about it. It's like a real common thing. So, you have to really be ruthless into in the protection of what you're trying to do. And anyway, that's my synopsis on this beautiful Friday morning.